In a place with no convenience stores, no vending machines, where even a fridge is just a distant luxury dream, ancient Aboriginal hunters still lived well. Not just lived, but lived healthily, flexibly, and enduringly. The question is, what did they eat? And how did they eat in such a way that it was full in 3 minutes last 3 days? We begin the journey on a sunny morning in the northern desert of Australia. A group of hunters with no metal weapons, no compass, no GPS, only wooden spears and a keen ear for nature. They set off, without food backpacks, without bulky water bags, without even snacks. You think they're reckless? Not at all. It's because they have survival secrets passed down over tens of thousands of years, the ultimate bush meal. For modern people, food is a comfort. For Aboriginal hunters, it is survival. A hunting day could last 12 hours, even several days. They had to calculate their calorie intake, so it was compact, energizing, easy to digest, and didn't require elaborate cooking. No microwave, no hand sanitizer, just fire and calloused hands. And this is when the ancient superfoods appear. From dried kangaroo meat to protein-rich grubs, from acacia seeds to cooked palm fat, things we now only see on survival TV shows. But for them, it was takeaway snacks. Have you ever seen a modern protein bar? Imagine a primitive version, the Wichita grub. Plump, ivory white, soft and so rich in protein, it would make today's whey protein tubs jealous. One Wichita grub can provide over 200 calories, equivalent to a modern snack meal. Hunters didn't need to cook them. They often ate them raw, biting in and immediately tasting the rich flavor melting in the mouth. If they had time, they would place them on hot coals, making the skin crispy while keeping the inside creamy. A few in a pouch on the hip were enough to walk dozens of kilometers across hot sand. When they caught a kangaroo, the hunter didn't rush to eat it all on the spot. The meat was cut, sliced thinly, hung on a trellis or high branch to be dried by the desert wind and sun. No preservatives, no vacuum packaging, just traditional meat drying skills and a little patience. A piece of dried kangaroo meat, hard as wood, was a compressed energy source. Chew it well, and it released sweetness, saltiness, and plenty of strength. A small handful was enough for an afternoon's hunt without fatigue, and importantly, lightweight. You could carry a kilo without it feeling heavier than a pair of shorts. Besides meat, Aboriginal people also knew how to eat the forest. Trees weren't just for shade, but were pantries. Bush yam roots, similar to sweet potatoes, grew deep underground. Just a few minutes of digging, peeling, lightly roasting or eating raw, and you had natural carbohydrates. And acacia seeds, well, they needed careful processing as raw seeds could be toxic. But once roasted, ground and mixed with a bit of water, you'd get a primitive kind of bread, chewy, fragrant, and long-lasting. Imagine eating a 10,000-year-old energy bar. That's exactly what it was. Unlike us, where eating is an art of living, for Aboriginal hunters, eating is to survive. A bushmeal usually took a few minutes, sitting under a tree, breaking a piece of dried meat, throwing a root on hot coals, nibbling on a grub, then standing up to continue as if never stopped. Eat enough, eat right, and eat without waste. That was the rule. Every bite was the result of skill, experience, and respect for nature. They didn't eat for fun. They ate to sustain life and spirit, the most essential things for a long hunt in the desert heat and late-day hunger. When you have to chase a 70-kilometer-per-hour kangaroo with no motorbike, no Nike shoes, just a spear and faith, you'll understand. Time is a luxury, and when the prey is caught, you eat as if there might not be a next time. Whatever runs fast must be eaten faster, because that is the reward, the energy, the survival. Aboriginal hunters didn't wait to pitch a tent, set a table, invite guests. Sometimes, amid sun-drenched dry grass, beside the fresh carcass, they began a feast. A very practical feast. Little ceremony, but full of skill, and usually lasting exactly 3 minutes. In the desert, animals aren't as gentle as in Disney movies. You hear a rustle in the bush, rush over, throw a spear, and if you hit, you've got a hot meal. Desert snake. Sounds scary. To Aboriginal people, it was a top protein source. The snake would be chopped into sections and placed on hot coals. No need to carefully skin it. When charred, the meat inside turned white and tender, like fish. A large snake could feed a group of 4 to 5 people well. And because it could be claimed by ants and flies in just a few minutes, hunters usually ate it immediately, no waiting. The same goes for lizards, especially goannas, giant lizards. If caught, they'd be placed whole on the fire until the skin cracked and the meat separated, ready to eat. Fast, neat, no fuss. Blood sugar dropping while hunting? No worries. Nature has a solution. Honey ants. They live underground, with swollen bellies full of tree nectar. When hunters found a nest, they patiently dug down, not to take it all, just a few ants. That nectar was sweet, syrupy, and energy-rich. Eating 1 or 2 ants would wake you right up. And of course, no one sat around savoring it. 1 bite, swallow, move on, classic hunter style. Though speed was critical, Aboriginal people never ate carelessly. They were taught from a young age how to identify toxic foods, how to process them quickly but safely. 1 wild root could leave you gasping if not soaked or cooked properly. And they knew clearly what should be eaten fresh and what needed drying for transport. If they caught something too big, like a full-grown kangaroo, they'd eat the most perishable parts immediately. Heart, liver, belly fat. The rest would be sun-dried or smoked for later use. Therefore, the 3-minute meal was never just not eating to get it over with. It was the pinnacle of understanding nature, the body, and time. Imagine an Aboriginal hunter running in the midday heat, tracking faint wallaby prints. When caught, they'd quickly eat a piece of fresh liver, rich in iron and vitamins, smile, turn, and continue the chase. It wasn't strange to them. Eating fast was part of their survival strategy. If you ate slowly, ants would eat first. If you waited to cook properly, the sun would be down and wild dogs would start to appear. An elder from the Yolngu tribe once said, "In the old days, our ancestors hunted with nothing but a spear and a cloth bag. What was in that bag? Roasted seeds, ground powder, dried meat. But more importantly, knowledge. Knowing what to eat, when, where, so no need to carry much." And that is the spirit of the Aboriginal bushmeal: compact, fast, skillful, and enough to survive the harsh desert without falling. While the modern world invents fridges, vacuum bags, dry ice, freeze dryers, Aboriginal people have lived freely in the desert for thousands of years, with meat that doesn't spoil, seeds that don't mold, and food always ready without a pantry. The question is, how did they store food amid 40-degree heat and endless dust? The answer is a series of simple yet extremely clever tricks, and we're about to explore them now. An Aboriginal hunter never wastes meat. After eating the freshest parts, liver, fat, organs, the rest of the carcass would be urgently processed. They had no salt, no aromatic BBQ smoke, but they had sun, wind, and fire. Right at the hunting site, they would cut the meat into long, thin strips and stretch them over tree branches near the fire. Smoke would repel flies, heat and wind would dry the surface. In just a few hours, the meat would firm up enough to be carried for days without spoiling. No one sat waiting all day like making modern beef jerky. They just needed it not to smell or attract ants. For Aboriginal people, seeds were the food bank. They didn't use money, but seeds were valued like gold. There were seeds like wattle seed, bush peanut, or kurrajong seeds, rich in protein, fat, and extremely long-lasting. After harvesting, they would roast them, grind them into powder, or store them whole in leather pouches hung high in trees, away from insects. When going on long hunts, they only need to carry a handful of flour mixed with water to stay full for a whole day. Flour mixed with water to drink. Sounds strange, but don't forget, this is how they cross hundreds of kilometers of desert and still stay healthy. Fat is the hardest thing to preserve in ancient times, as it spoils easily. But Aboriginal people knew how to make use of naturally durable fats. When they hunt goanna lizards or fat snakes, they cut out the internal fat, press it out, and let it cool to solidify. This thick fat can be stored in bamboo tubes or animal skins and carried for many days without spoiling. They even mix the fat with fireplace ash, which may sound odd, but the ash absorbs moisture and slows down spoilage. A kind of ancient earth butter. Though it doesn't smell as good as French butter if you've just walked 10 kilometers under the blazing sun, a lick of it feels like eating a grilled meat sandwich. In many regions without honeybees, like in Europe, Aboriginal people still found ways to obtain natural sugar from other sources. One is from honey ants, as mentioned earlier. Another is from the sap that flows from the bark of trees like acacia. They would scrape the resin, dry it, and use it gradually like candy. Its flavor isn't intensely sweet, but gentle, like light syrup, and importantly, it never spoils. Kept in a leather pouch for a year and still edible. Aboriginal people also had a highly effective preservation method, burying. Not the kind of burying and forgetting, but planned burying. Women would often hide pre-prepared roots and wild tubers in rock crevices or bury them in dry sand. Where the temperature is stable, wind can't enter and ants can't reach. Each group had secret spots for storing such food. When they returned weeks later from hunting trips, they simply dug it up, and it was like opening a wild fridge, still edible, still fragrant and non-toxic. The ability to store food without elaborate preservation was not only due to technique, but also thanks to a life philosophy. Eat when there's food, share when there's plenty, and always trust that nature will provide again. No hoarding excessively, no waste, and always keeping just enough to live, never so much that it spoils. With this spirit, Aboriginal people didn't need winter food reserves like Europeans, because they had turned every day of the year into a day of edible abundance. If you think eating is just about taking in calories to survive, then to Aboriginal people, you've missed the most important part. Every meal is a ritual, a thank you, and a way to connect with Mother Earth. Whether eating in 3 minutes or storing for 3 days, their act of eating was never just to fill the belly, but also to remember who they are, where they are, and why this place has given them food. An Aboriginal hunter, when eating, doesn't just know I caught this animal, but also understands this animal came from the land my ancestors allowed me to enter. Not every land is a place you have the right to hunt on. Not every animal can be killed. Some animals are totems of another clan. If you kill and eat them, you're not only breaking human law, but offending the spirits of your ancestors. Therefore, before eating, they often whisper, not a Western-style religious prayer, but a conversation with ancestors and the spirit of the land. Thank you for feeding me today. I will not waste this. I will remember this grace. You might think a fire is for grilling lizards, boiling roots, or drying meat, but for Aboriginal people, the fire is the center of all relationships. It is where food is shared first with the elders, then women, then children. No one is left out. Those who couldn't hunt that day still receive a portion, because food does not belong to individuals, it belongs to the community. That same fire is also where stories about the animals just eaten are told, that this snake was once an ancient warrior, that lizard taught humans how to climb trees. You eat a piece of meat, but you're also eating a part of the ancestor's dream. In Aboriginal culture, eating alone is almost unimaginable. If you find an animal and don't share it, you'll be seen as breaking the communal bond. In fact, children are taught from a young age. If you find a honey ant nest, don't eat it immediately. Bring it back to share. If not, next time you won't find it again, because the land does not reward selfish people. This is not a threat, but a philosophy of harmony. The land only provides for those who share. Nature does not favor the solitary. Dreaming, or Dreamtime, is the soul of Aboriginal culture. It is history, belief, and survival guide all at once. And food, whether hunted, gathered, prepared, or stored, is always tied to the dreaming. The hunter is not just following the tracks of a kangaroo, but also the tracks of ancestors who walked this land thousands of years ago. The plant from which they take roots is not just a plant, but a descendant of a Dreamtime being that transformed into a tree to nourish humans. Even every lizard carries a spirit, and if you eat without remembering that, you are dulling the memory of the land. When a hunter eats, he is also recording the land, because every place has its own taste, its own animals, its own seeds. No maps, no GPS, but through eating they know where they are. Tasting a seed tells them where it came from. Biting into lean meat, they can tell which species it is, from which region. Every meal is a living geographic marker, an ecological lesson, and a way for Aboriginal people to stay deeply connected to the land. For modern people, GPS says, "You have arrived." For Aboriginal people, the stomach says, "You are in the right place." If a land still feeds you, it means your ancestors are guiding you correctly. You are being accepted. And when you are full, you're not just full of meat, but full of the faith that you are still part of the ancient cycle. And that is the Aboriginal hunter's bush meal. 3 minutes to eat, 3 days to stay full, but a lifetime to absorb. Not because the food is so nutritious, not because the meat is so fatty, but because in every bite there is the land's consent, the ancestors' permission, the community's sharing, and above all, humility before the natural world. If there is anything for modern people to learn from this bush meal, it is this. Don't just eat to live. Eat to remember who you are, where you come from, and what you owe to nature.